Everyone. Um, this is not financial advice. This is just the way that I'm looking at the market. I use this to get my head straight. I find that going through it like this, sort of, it actually gets my biases out of my head and clarifies things going into the day or even the long term. All right, so interesting candle today. Very strong bounce without going into this wick too, which I guess concerns me a little. In that I still suspect we'll probably come back down into here. But reasonable volume. So it seems like there's been plenty of people buying a dip. One thing I've sort of been looking at is, what is there anything in this area that would suggest that it will stop here? And the only real thing is actually these candles here. I mean, it is a fairly highly traded zone. Where's my... So it is a fairly highly traded zone and potentially could come up into this level pretty easy. But I decided to go and have a look at some heat maps this morning, and this is the 6-month heat map on CoinGlass. Probably make that full screen, but I think you'll get the picture. So basically, there's actually not a hell of a lot of liquidity just below here. Like, not as much as I was expecting, put it that way. It seemed to have taken out all this stuff, and it's quite happy with that at the moment. But obviously, still quite a lot down in this region, so just be aware of that. In terms of where we might stop if it does come down in here, you're looking at about that 49,200-ish mark, 49,100 would be an interesting stop for a bounce, but it kind of shows you that if we did get below this and sweep this bit of liquidity here, it was probably just going to go straight down to this level. There's nothing really holding it up at that point, unless someone comes in and just buys a ton of it in this area. I would expect it to come all the way down. Interestingly, we do have a lot of sell liquidity here. Like, a lot of people are going short there. That's a very big 6 billion there versus like some of these longs, 5.5 billion. That's pretty high. But we're only talking sort of 4 billion. 60% of just one of the lines here, but there's so many of those lines close together. Like, there's tens of billions of dollars worth of liquidity up at that point there. What would be interesting in this environment is if we actually swept up, did break to new highs, but then came basically a Wyckoff distribution where you go up and sweep those highs, sweep that liquidity, and then come back down. I can't remember what that, I think it's a UTAD or something it's called at the top. That would just be pretty dirty. But in this environment where there isn't a lot of open interest in comparison to a proper bull run, I wouldn't put it past Bitcoin to do that. But yeah, was interested to see what was around this level, and I think if we come into the 1 month, it kind of gives a 3 month. So as you can see, there's not a lot of liquidity down here. Only, less than $1 billion in all these areas. So it makes sense that it swept this bit. It stopped short of here. Will it come back there? Maybe, but at the moment, it's got to come all the way back there. So if we see it attacking this, I would be very surprised, given that we do actually have quite a bit of liquidity within reach up here. Now, using this 1 week chart, we can see, there is a bit building down here in the last few days. But there is quite a bit more further up, and this is an interesting point for it to come to. Now, do I think we get there? There's nothing to say necessarily that we can't. Do we sweep back down? Maybe. I don't think this really gives me any particular edge, except for the fact that there is a target here, and I think anywhere up to that 65, 66 mark, I wouldn't necessarily be overly bullish at that point. I'd actually expect it to come back down from there, but I think shorter term time frames will be the key for picking direction on Bitcoin. As you can see, it did swipe that most of that liquidity in there. It's left a bit up here though, so see how it goes. Yeah, I just thought that would give a bit of insight as to why it's actually come up so high, because realistically, when you're looking at it here, it wasn't a lot. At that point there, it looked like it was ready to come back down, but obviously throughout this period, it did pick up some shorts, and it just wanted to swipe them. And obviously by this time, there is a lot more shorts coming into the market than there are longs, but now that's kind of balanced out, so it's in a bit of indecision land at the moment. There's a lot of liquidity to take on both sides, so we'll just have to look at the shorter term price action to suggest which way we're going. So interestingly, when we zoomed out that anchored volume profile, the most traded zone comes down here, and the value area high is at about the same area that the value area low was when we were more zoomed in on this region. So it's not really anything to write home about, but actually the previous one was probably a bit higher, to be honest. The bounce here, obviously we've sort of hit into this channel here, and I drew this, like this line here I had in from ages ago as we were coming down here, and it did seem to respect this line a little bit as we were coming down, trying to break through it. We do have the bottom of the Gaussian channel there, which could be a resistance point. It's also a highly traded volume area. There's obviously a bit of liquidity there at the moment, so it wouldn't surprise me if we came back up into here, even tapping into this. I think that's the 100 EMA there, actually. That yellow one I've changed to 100 for the time being. So realistically, it wouldn't surprise me if we came up into here before trying to move back down. That's to me going to be a pretty key resistance level. That's where a lot of the liquidity was, maybe a little bit higher than 65 and a half sort of area, and it's got a fair bit of action through here as well, okay, in terms of support and resistance. So that around that 65k level, I would expect a lot of resistance and yeah, potentially another bounce to the downside. But certainly there's a lot of protection for Bitcoin around this level in terms of just not a lot of liquidity to go into, and obviously it got bought up pretty hard off those levels. So that's suggesting at least a short-term bounce at the moment, and stochastic momentum is certainly switched to the upside now. I think even if I go change that to the 10 period, which is what I had it on when we first started looking at it, yeah, it's moving to the upside. We're not out of the bearish control zone yet, but it's certainly fairly well extended to the downside. So bounce would not be out of the question here. Global liquidity is still dropping off a little bit. Interestingly, S&P 500 has jumped a little. NASDAQ has also jumped a little. Looks like it's going to be an inside candle though. It's not going to break out above this previous day. So it's what you get on the stock markets, the main markets. They tend to try and fake everyone out. They'll move down pretty hard and then have an up day just randomly. And everyone thinks they're going bullish again, and then they'll come back down. I am a little surprised we didn't fill this gap yet, but yeah, it is what it is. Nvidia has, I don't know, there was a gap there really, a gap in the bodies, but not necessarily in price action overall. More shorter time frames. So yeah, little bounce here. Momentum's still to the downside though, so I wouldn't expect this to be a breaking up to all-time highs again. S&P 500, same story. Equal weight is actually dropping. It's interesting that the money's flying back into the big guys again. Mag 7, money's flowing back in, and the equal weight, well, the rest of the market struggles. IWM is down on the day, RSP is down on the day. It's just money just shifting around the markets. There's no real breakdown yet, and no real drive to the upside. It's just, yeah, people making moves on shorter time frames at the moment. XLY, XLP is pretty flat. Dow Jones versus gold, yeah, still eking up. Dixie, again, no continuation to the downside, but certainly no breaking to the upside either. VIX is down again. Yeah, if we break this 200 EMA on the VIX, that will be interesting, because it seems to, as much as I don't really pay much attention to indicators on the VIX, the 200 seems to be providing a bit of resistance, at least over the last, 9 months or so. So if we break above that, that will be interesting. TLT is moving up, which is good. Good for my super account anyway. Bonds, that's a big volume day. Wow. A lot of interest in bonds there. High yield as well. some interesting, got a bit of a skew crush there. So again, that's supporting the idea that this is just a little money movement rally here. It's not. It's probably going to be met with seller demand, I'd say, over the next couple of days. Yeah, so what was it? I was going to say that there's some interesting reports coming out. It's breaking below that level too. So copper looks like it may continue lower. Looking at that 200 EMA still as a target. Yeah, the banks in the US in particular have like trillions of dollars worth of derivatives exposure. So, in other words, they're fairly highly leveraged, and there's no real solid plan in terms of how to manage that. So if we were to get a major sell-off for whatever reason, if something went to shit with one of the banks, then it could actually cause quite a cascade effect. Basically, they're having to scramble for returns, and they're going into the higher risk investment products, particularly of recent, or over the last year or so, which is essentially what happened in the GFC, but by the sound of it, it's happening again, and probably in a worse way. Good old human greed and stupidity coming in. So yeah, it looks like that might be what triggers a black swan at some stage. Not a lot going on with silver. If it breaks below these wicks here, then it's probably coming down quite a bit as well. Money supply still pretty flat. 2-year, 10-year yield curves still no real change. Percentage of stocks above the 50-day has actually moved up a bit. It's interesting. I would have expected that to come down. So just given the fact that IWM was down and the equal weight was down, I expected that to be down as well. Anyway, so we might have a quick look at BTC longs. Again, people are buying up here. They're actually buying this rip as well. So there's a lot of longs coming into the market right now. Interesting to see if there isn't some sort of flush of these. Bit of liquidity run, bit of a long squeeze at some stage, but at the moment that's kind of a bullish sign for me. Plenty of people thinking that Bitcoin's at a discount. Sorry. So I want to have a quick look at ETH as well, just to see if it can tell us anything about how the market's going. Interesting, it bounced off that value area low. That is quite interesting. ETH's putting in a potential higher low here, which is kind of supporting the fact that Bitcoin dominance is on the way down and ETH dominance is actually still trending up. Although it seems like with ETH dominance coming down as well, it looks like the altcoins are getting a bit of excitement again. Just seems those that are left in the market are all spread across all the altcoins. So whenever Bitcoin bounces a little bit, the altcoins run pretty hard. But that's actually not a bad little base for Sol there. And Sol would probably be suggesting that, yeah, we're going to come up a little bit. Well, there's at least potential for another day or two of upside on crypto in general. Matic's, that's not a bad little base for Matic either. Just checking out the bigger ones. That's interesting. FTM's kind of hit based early. Phantom, eh? Link based a bit early too. That's pretty solid. What's that? Like a quadruple bottom here on Link. That's suggesting Link wants to come back up into this $18 region actually. So yeah, wouldn't like you can't really take the alts as any significant sign, but there's a lot of them that are forming pretty good reversal patterns at the moment. Geez, looks like Doge was lucky it didn't break below this. Would have come back down to about 8 cents. So yeah, just keep that in mind, I guess, that there is a lot of structure suggesting that if we do bounce, it could be a decent one, which kind of comes back to the theory that we could not only come into here, but we could actually, over the next couple of weeks or something, at least come in, swipe that liquidity, and then come back into the zone. Whether we base off around here again somewhere and then go to new all-time highs like proper bull run style, we'll have to wait and see what happens with the general stock market. But that's certainly a valid theory, I would think. But we need to get through sort of these levels here. This is going to be a critical sort of level. If we break above that and get some sort of retest and confirmation, then definitely new all-time highs. That sort of level is an easy target. I don't see that being a problem for Bitcoin at all. But we'll have to wait and see what the market decides after today. But at the moment, I'm leaning towards that being a fairly strong candle. Whereas yesterday, looking at history, I was leaning more towards that breaking through today. Like, yeah, coming up, but then moving down in the same day. I thought we'd have quite a volatile day. So yeah, it recovered more of that candle than I thought it would. But this wick is still a little concerning for me. So, just watch out for those bounces to the downside. And it may be news plays that actually do that as well. Not necessarily, good technical analysis. It could just be a news event. Just quickly, for those in Origin that are interested, where are we? What's that? Oh, that was the old version. This is the new bot here. I actually turned it on my account just to test all the settings and stuff, make sure it was all working before we roll it out. And it took a long, after this gigantic candle here, like 0.87% move on that candle, open to close. I think it was just under 1% high to low, low to high. I thought, oh shit. It's very rare that you get them running straight from that point. Like even here, you get a retrace back into that. But this was the first green candle as well. Like normally your first green candle gets a decent retrace into it, if not a fake out. And given how high we were and how much we'd retrace, there's a bit of resistance in here. I looked at this and went, oh shit, that may not come to fruition, this one. But it came back down, and this is why you need decent breathing space on your stop losses for crypto. You got to have real patience, and you probably have no fingernails left if you're a fingernail biter, because that there was getting very close to my stop loss on this. But yeah, we basically retraced that whole candle there and then found support on that 200 EMA. Very, very close to getting stopped out. And then we ended up taking TP1. TP1 would have actually happened right at the top of that candle. Anyway, that's just something I thought would be interesting that you guys might like. The yeah, the bot seems pretty accurate at the moment.